Have you been considering whether the missed Prospector or maybe the Argo Mole is the ship for you? Maybe you already have the Prospector and is considering to upgrade to the Mole? Well, today allow me to help you make up your mind. Today's video is sponsored by SecretLab. We all strive for the best possible gaming experience, but the importance of a good quality chair is often underestimated. SecretLab produces some of the most comfortable and high quality gaming chairs you can get. So upgrade your Commander chair today and fly in style and comfort. Follow the link in the video description to their store, type in your height, your weight, and it will tell you which chairs fit you for the best possible seating experience. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Star Citizen. Today we're talking about mining ships, and we're talking about the two only mining ships in the game right now, which is the MISC Prospector and the Argo Mole. Of course, MISC Prospector being the solo mining ship and the Argo Mole being the more bigger but multi-crew focused ship. And we're going to talk about both of them. We're both going to talk about them from a solo miner's perspective, and we're also going to talk about them from a group or fleet mining perspective. So let's start with a solo miner's perspective. Obviously we have the Prospector with 32 SCU of cargo, a single mining head, small sized, that is controllable by the pilot. What makes it a wonderful ship, single seat cockpit, a really good solo mining ship, was what it's designed for. Now when we look at the Mole, at first glance it might look like an upgrade. We got 96 SCU of cargo, so 3 times the cargo you get in a Prospector. You also get 3 mining heads, and all of them are size 2, so not only are they 3 times, they're also bigger. Problem is, none of them are controllable from the cockpit. There is one relatively close, but it does mean you have to run back down a ladder and then up into to the mining seat before you can use it. So even though you have 3 times the mining lasers, you're of course only going to be able to use 1 if you're using it as a solo miner. However, the bigger size doesn't really help you here, because looking up the stats on the different modules, you will see that the bigger mining lasers does not have any benefits over the small variant. The only difference between a small-sized mining heads and a big-sized mining heads, obviously other than the turret hardpoint it needs, is its range. The only thing you get from mining in a Mole compared to a Prospector, if you're mining solo, is that extra cargo. Now that alone can be a interesting prospect to go for, because sometimes you're going to leave materials behind. That happens to me pretty much on every mining trip. I come across a rock where there's just more material in the rock that I can carry in a Prospector, and I'm forced to leave valuable materials behind. Obviously, if I were mining in a Mole, I would easily be able to carry everything with me back. Even though I wouldn't be able to mine bigger rocks or anything like that, I would be able to carry more cargo. I wouldn't have to leave half a rock on the surface. But there is some significant drawbacks to the Mole over the Prospector that doesn't necessarily show up on a stat sheet. One of them being that travel time between the laser and the cockpit. Not that it makes you less efficient, I mean, it doesn't take that long, but in an emergency situation, let's say you suddenly have a pirate inbound, you're gonna have to get out of that mining seat, run back to the ladder, up the ladder, forward into the cockpit, get into the cockpit seat before you can go and begin to maneuver the ship away. This means you're going to be much more vulnerable for longer before you can begin actually moving out of the way. Now, there is a fair point that the Argo Mole does have significantly more shield hit points. Prospector only gets a single size 1 shield generator, where you get 2 size 2s on the Mole. So there is a significant increase in the number of shield hit points that you have, the raw hit point pool. So it can also sustain fire for longer, but a high DPS ship is still going to be able to strip the Mole shield relatively quickly. So you are a little more exposed, I think, in the Mole, because you're not sitting in the pilot seat. And there's also the point, if you do mess up your charge on the rock and you begin to overcharge the rock, that's going to detonate. Well, in the Prospector, it's easy just to slam the ship in reverse and get some distance away from the rock and away from danger. Again, that's not going to be possible in the Mole. You're going to be a lot more exposed, because if a thing is about to blow, all you can do is just sit and pray that your shield's going to hold, because there's no way you're going to be able to run back up the ladder, forward into the cockpit, get into the seat, and then get away before that thing explodes in your face. So you are more exposed when you are in the Mole than you are in the Prospector. So for a solo miner, this is really a risk versus reward. Are you willing to take the risk of being an easier target for pirates? You're going to be easier destroyed by exploding rocks, but you're going to be able to carry back more material in case you find those really, really good high percentage rocks. But let's take a look at it from a fleet or crew perspective here, because surely the Mole is designed as a multi-crewed ship and therefore must be a much better choice in this situation. Well, as we talked about so far, the Mole is essentially just 3 prospectors that has been hot glued together. You get 3 times the cargo, you get 3 times the mining lasers, and yes, they have longer range on the Mole, but they have the same mining power, so you get 3 times the mining power, 3 times the cargo. It is essentially just 3 prospectors glued together. Obviously, if we're looking at it from a crew perspective, yeah, you can only be 1 in a prospector. So to make it a fair comparison, we have to compare to the situation where it is 3 prospectors mining versus a single mole. If everybody is in prospectors instead of a single mole, you can fan out, you can cover a bigger area when you are prospecting and when you are looking for rocks. Especially when you're mining Quantinium, if you find a rock that is big enough that it will fit in a prospector, but you're then flying in a mole, well, you just wasted a lot of people's time because you could have mined that on your own in a prospector. I think it is much more efficient to be 3 prospectors than it is to be a single mole. Because, again, you can cover a bigger area, and if somebody finds a rock that they can carry themselves, they can crack open themselves, they're just gonna say, I got a rock, I can mine this on my own, I got this. They mine the rock, they fly back to the refinery, and while they're flying back, the 2 remaining prospectors can keep searching the area, keep moving forward, keep looking for new rocks. Should you come across a rock that is so big you can't mine it alone, well, then you just call in a fleet member to your location, and you're gonna be both helping each other crack the rock open. You both collect the materials that you need, as much as you can, because there's most likely then also going to be more material than you can carry in a single prospector, and you both fly back, but you still leave one behind who can then continue to prospect. Maybe he'll find the next big rock so you can go and help each other with that when you come back. However, if you were doing the same thing in a mole, when you need to go back after you've mined the rock, you are basically having 2 other people who are sitting idle in that time it takes you to fly back, offload cargo and go back. They're just sitting in the ship doing nothing. They could go and drink coffee if they wanted to, because there's nothing for them to do in that period where they could be utilizing that time more efficiently by being on the planet in a ship of their own. Of course, there's a point if you are in a bigger org and maybe not everybody has prospectors, then there is a point in getting the mole so that you can get people out there helping mining if they want to, even though they may not have the ship needed to participate in a mining fleet. So there is a point in it in terms of a social thing. And another thing is also, it is obviously, at least from my experience, I find it a lot more enjoyable to play as a crew in the same ship rather than playing as a fleet in individual ships, simply because of that communication that needs to be done in order to use the ship effectively. Because in a mole, you need to make sure the ship is positioned correctly so all the mining lasers can actually see the rock that you want to mine. That means you need to communicate with the people in the mining church saying, okay, you need to move a little bit that way, a little bit that way, can you move up a little bit? And everybody needs to communicate and say, oh, I'm going to crack that fragment, you're going to crack that fragment, and I'm going to begin scooping while you guys crack this. There's a lot more teamwork involved in operating a single larger ship than it is to operate a lot of smaller ships. So my overall recommendation is, unless you are part of an organization with people who does not have a prospector, then I would always say get a prospector, because if you're looking for pure efficiency, you're almost always better off flying 1 or more prospectors than you would flying a mole. So as I see it, there are 2 things that CIG could do in order to make the mole a more viable choice for players. One of them could be to let the mole have a longer instability time for Quantinium. So if you are out mining Quantinium, then instead of the 15-minute cooldown we have on the Prospector and the mole right now as well, maybe up that significantly. Let's say an hour, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, something like that. Something that would allow the mole to stay out after it's mined an initial rock. That would make it more sensible to use as a bigger use that bigger cargo, because you're never going to fill up that 96 SU if you're mining Quantinium. Obviously, you could be mining other things, then you could use the cargo, but in general, that could be a solution. Another solution, which is probably a little bit more elegant, where you don't really have to change the ship, would just be to make certain areas of systems have rocks that are just significantly larger than what you get anywhere else, so that you are pretty much guaranteed that every single rock is going to be needing multiple mining lasers in order to crack it open. Because in that situation, you would always have to pull in more prospectors. You would still have the benefit of being able to fan out to look for good rocks easier in a fleet, but if you were in an area where all the rocks were so big that it would need 2 or 3 lasers in order to crack them open, then the mole would be a much better choice to go into areas like that. Finally, if you consider picking up Star Citizen, do remember I do have a referral code showed here on screen. You can use that to get some extra starter credits, and I get some cool stuff in game. And finally, if you have any comments on this, do you think I'm wrong? Do you think some of these points are valid? I would love to hear it in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I will see you guys in space.